No, it's not easy. I counted every penny 3 times to make sure I'd have enough to get me through.
Well, I guess there never was quite enough money to go around.
I had a good job, which like I said, I thought was going to last.
$335 will not even pay rent. $335 will barely pay a babysitter to go out and go to work.
We worry that the kids are going to get sick, you know. If anything would happen, what would happen to us?
Historically, Ohio's industries have been as strong and diverse as any in our nation. In the 1950s and 1960s, Youngstown and the Mahoning Valley were among the country's most productive regions.
Women were getting jobs in the mills now. They no longer had to be waitresses. They made decent money as steel workers.
But that trend has changed. The booms have gone bust. The winds of change have swept across our state, leaving behind deepening pockets of poverty.
People started living a decent life just prior to this shutdown. And those are the people that I really feel bad about, that they had a taste of the good life, and then it was all gone. Very demoralizing.
Today, 1.5 million Ohioans live below the poverty line, which in 1990 was $10,560 per year for a family of 3. Almost 500,000 others exist dangerously near that line. The slender economic thread that held together the quilt of promise and security has unraveled, leaving a tattered patchwork of poverty throughout our state. And who are the people and issues that form the fabric of this crazy quilt of poverty? Despite prevailing myths that they are lazy, shiftless, welfare cheaters, many of the poor do work. In fact, many of the so-called middle class are only a divorce, job injury, or plant closing away from becoming another piece of the quilt. In this state, children, households headed by women or blacks, and families in our 28 Appalachian counties are at the greatest risk of being poor. These persons are held back by the lack of jobs, the lingering effects of racism and sexism, and not enough child care or health insurance. A key reason for the rise in poverty is changes in the employment pattern, not merely job losses. Ohio has lost many high-wage manufacturing jobs. Too often, these have been replaced with low-wage jobs, or no jobs at all. Ohio's aging industries fell short in their efforts to compete with newer or updated manufacturing counterparts in the South and abroad. Cheaper labor was also available in the Sun Belt and in foreign nations. The result of these factors produced a loss of 1/3 of the state's manufacturing jobs.
It could have been avoided if we had a country that set their priorities more for people and less for profits.
Many of the job losses were in heavy industries like steel, with high-wage, low-skill positions. The erosion of jobs out of the state also forced other losses among countless supplier companies and energy and material sources in the mines of Appalachia. In the late 1970s and early 80s, tens of thousands lost the only jobs they knew. The locked gates of the plants that had failed became a worldwide symbol of America's Rust Belt.
Well, I had 34 years when I was dismissed or early retired. It meant the end of life as you once knew it. And the ideal thing was that you worked and you supported a family, you bought a home, and you paid your bills. And obviously when the plant shut down, it really had a tremendous impact.
It was very hard because we weren't poor, and and I knew people who were poor, and I used to, I worked in the soup kitchen at the church, taking care of poor people and feeding poor people, and then we were one of those people. It was very hard.
At the east end of town, at the foot of the hill, there's a chimney so tall that says Aragon Mill. But there's no smoke at all coming out of the stack, 'cause the mill has pulled out and and it ain't coming back.
As the economy gradually improved in the mid-1980s, higher technology manufacturing jobs emerged. But many Ohio workers lacked the training they needed for high-tech manufacturing. People who had been productive all their lives found themselves unable to re-enter the workforce.
I thought that I had a job that was going to last me until my retirement. And everybody had a good job to go to right out of high school. And I know a lot of people in Youngstown didn't place much value on going beyond high school because there was very good jobs available with just a high school education.
You could see that people who had always paid their bills were uptight, and the housing market fell short. Your home now was not worth what it was worth. The community at large was not prepared to receive that kind of a blow.
The effect of the widespread layoffs and shutdowns on homeowners was profound. Many lost homes they could no longer afford to maintain, only to find a real lack in other housing that was any more affordable or in decent shape.
People have a right to a choice about where they live. And if you're poor and don't have very much money, you don't have a choice. Or your choices get made for you. You live in a government housing project where you have no safety whatsoever, or you live in, a very small piece of a house that's been chopped up into little small apartments.
Deteriorating neighborhoods, coupled with growing numbers of people needing retraining and new skills, provided the incentive to get Project Choice operating. The Choice Cooperative in Youngstown acquires houses deemed worth saving, then rehabilitates the properties using laborers who participate in a paid training program. The homes are then sold to low-income families.
We have a training program where people can work up to 20 hours a week as trainees, and they get $4 an hour. One of our trainees worked before at Taco Bell, was making like $3.25 an hour, and just despising his work and not feeling good about himself. And he's got a 75-cent raise now, but better than that, he's got a shot at a $6 to $8 an hour job now after he's gone through this training.
A drywall specialist and volunteer at Choice, Tracy Makepeace, talks about the opportunities offered to participants.
I would rather see them in here learning something instead of out getting in trouble, And I know for me, when I first got into the non-traditional field, it was exciting to me. And I'm hoping that it touched them the same way.
The changes in the economy of the steel industry sent shockwaves that rippled into the 28 counties that make up the Appalachian region in southeastern Ohio. In 1979, there were 17,000 miners in Ohio. Today, there are only 7,000. The result of the near elimination of the high-wage, low-skill opportunities threatened to make this area another panel on our tattered quilt of poverty.
I made top rate. I was a mine examiner and made $800 or $900 a week. Good benefits, good money. Teaching and about anything you do, you couldn't touch the money.
At one time, Dave Dixon was taking home $2,500 a month. Today, his family struggles to make ends meet with a little over $900 a month. It's difficult for Appalachian Ohio to attract new jobs and for residents to move up the ladder.
Changes in our economy have resulted in people being left out. When we moved from that into industry, into wage economy, people were left out in that shuffle. There was an increase in poverty. People did suffer. People came and moved into this area in the first place was because of coal and timber and those kind of industries that were dependent on those resources. But that was 50 years ago. Those industries left, and the people were still here. And that's part of the historic problem.
Although many people work, they struggle to stay just above the poverty line. Many others need public assistance. But even this is no real answer because it simply isn't enough. Welfare payments don't meet basic needs. In 1990, the state of Ohio has determined that the minimum income need for a family of 3 is $739 per month. Ohio's welfare paid that family $334 per month. 10 years ago, benefits in Ohio met 76% of the minimum need. Today, they meet only 45% of need.
The biggest problem that the state of Ohio and the federal government face in this is that they are unwilling to recognize that you can't solve poverty without spending more money.
Rural poverty isn't just a problem in Ohio's coal mining counties. Poverty has also struck the family farms.
It's very frustrating. We have been able to hold our ends together financially. We're not gaining financially. It's very tough to retire any debts that we have at this time. We simply make ends meet by not purchasing any new equipment.
Trying to negotiate with the bankers, maybe reduce payments for a year or two.
Well, now we're down at the bottom of this big roller coaster because we had to go through. The foreclosure was in the paper, and that was the worst hurt, the worst in the world.
Farming is a lifestyle, not just a job. Crop failure, impending foreclosure, market fluctuation, adverse weather conditions, and escalating operating costs are some of the stress factors facing the farm community. Failure can be very isolating.
The odds out there are so great against our farming community and our individual families that we need to find ways to take this great gift of individuality and pride and self-sustenance and bring the community together to fight the larger elements that have control over them.
The Rural Life Outreach Project provides an opportunity for farm families to talk about their problems and successes.
You feel so alone, like you're in this all by yourself and no one else in the world has this problem. Sister Christine has been a big help to us, and she helps us to put these ideas together and to send them to the right people.
When farmers are in financial trouble, much of the rest of the economic world is in trouble. I can cite examples across this diocese of people we've been working with who have lost everything. The depression, the personal depression in a family is devastating.
We used to be farmers, mechanics and builders, making houses out of local white pine. Now we're all sweeping floors in the shopping malls, standing on the food stamp line.
Although economic loss, whether due to a plant closing or foreclosure of the family farm, is a highly publicized cause of poverty here in Ohio, it's our children who make up the fabric of those most affected by the ravages of poverty. 1 in 3 Ohio children is born poor. Over 20,000 children are born to teenagers each year. Many of these children, born to children, grow up in the community's poorest housing. They confront illiteracy, violent crime, drugs, and prostitution daily. They find far too few positive role models, too little help. Too many children start school behind their peers and never catch up. Poor children need a head start in school. Parents need help with home and family activities that will prepare their children for school.
We know for a fact that if you invest in children at an early age, and there are some excellent examples of federal programs that have done that, such as the Women's, Infants, and Children's Program, better known as WIC, where a federal investment of $1 returns $3. We also know for a fact that if you spend $1 on preschool education for children, that you get a return on that investment of about $6, because those children are less apt to drop out of school, become delinquent, end up in our prison system, end up on welfare, end up illiterate, and so it's a very wise investment to invest in our children.
Older students who fall off the track need summer programs, tutoring, and special classes to keep them at their grade level. Too many students drop out of school. In fact, some Ohio school systems have a 50% dropout rate.
There is no entrance to work without a high school education.
In Cincinnati, the Lower Price Hill Community School offers dropouts an opportunity to complete their education through the high school equivalency program.
Well, if you were to come in here on the average day, you would see about 30 people working in our large room on basic reading skills.
1 million Ohio workers need retraining just to keep up and find their way out of the patchwork of poverty. In the 1990s, new jobs will require 13.5 years of schooling. 3 out of every 4 jobs will require education beyond high school. but Ohio ranks near the bottom in college attendance.
Another program area is the college program with Chatfield College. That is a very traditional looking program as far as having lectures and traditional college format, but it is not traditional in the sense that we have a babysitting room. Also, we have a cooking class one day a week, and we try to have an atmosphere here that is not institutional and makes people feel right at home.
When you have someone out there who's rooting for you, and they say, you can do it, I know you can do it, you're determined to do it in order not to let them down. You don't want to let them down is the most important thing. And so therefore you keep striving, and in the long run you benefit yourself the most.
Throughout our state, a new class of poor is emerging. Women from middle-class lifestyles are suddenly finding themselves without a husband, without an income, and without security.
We had a good income, and then suddenly to have him pulled out of the family and to go on welfare was very difficult.
I come from a middle-class lifestyle. I came home one afternoon and my husband's closet was empty and he was gone, not even a note. When my husband left me, I hadn't worked in over 10 years. And I went and applied as a waitress several places, and I found out that they were looking for young women. I am caught in the middle of the system. I do not qualify for any type of help. Therefore, when he does not pay his child support, I have, really a difficult time.
ACES is a national organization that evolved out of the frustration felt by Jerry Jensen, a native Ohioan.
ACES started in March of 1984. Due to my personal frustration of being unable to collect support for my two sons. And I went to the child support agency and I said, you really need to do something here. I want you to make him help support his children. And the attorney at the agency looked at me and said, I'm so tired of you women coming in here and whining and complaining. If you think you can do a better job, go do it. 9 out of every 10 children who are on welfare in this nation are entitled to child support payments and don't receive them. There's over 16 million children entitled to payments, and they're owed $15 billion. And that's more than we spent in a whole year on welfare payments.
ACES works to empower custodial parents by providing information concerning child support and visitation regulations, rights and remedies, positive single parenting, and divorce and dissolution.
ACES made a major difference for me because I was no longer alone in the fight.
Now that I've become involved in ACES, I've met a lot of women in the same situation that I'm in. Life is beginning to come back to me again.
As more people are forced to turn to public assistance for help, a growing number are getting lost in the stacks of paperwork. Like Jerry Jensen, others are putting their frustrations to work, finding ways to break out of the fabric of poverty. Helping ourselves means education or home, the concept of networking in action. It teams people on welfare with those who have broken the cycle of poverty. Volunteers share information about the resources, choices, and options available to the poor.
And I don't believe that college is the answer for everyone. I do believe that education, in the sense of learning how to get the information for yourself so you don't have to believe one source's answers in order to survive, is extremely important in order to get out of the trap.
I see a lot of women coming in who feel that the system has beat them down, that there's nowhere to go, that they're not worth something. Project Mustard Seed is a program that's geared to assist low-income single-parent women with life work planning. And we do life work planning workshops, and we cover topics like decision-making, problem-solving. One of our goals, our main underlying goal, is to break the cycle of poverty. And we do that with the life work planning workshops, but also we're helping the women change that welfare mentality.
I can't believe that anybody is on welfare because they want to be, because the system keeps you there. You want to get ahead and they knock you down. The program helped me see that you need to reach out beyond yourself, and in doing that you build up your own self-worth and self-esteem and help someone else along the way.
I discovered there is help, but you have to get out and reach out. You have to reach out. You have to call out. But you got to do it for yourself. You can't allow other people to do it for you.
You virtually are locked into the welfare system once you're in it. And when a woman is strong enough and healthy enough to make the changes within herself and then to go out and make a more productive life for herself and her children, it's like the cards are stacked against her.
The real exclamation point on the growth of poverty is the plight of the homeless. Countless numbers in our society have never owned their own home, let alone held out any hope of living in a clean and safe environment. For more than 140,000 Ohioans this year, home will be a cardboard box, their car, an abandoned building, or a mat in an overcrowded shelter.
No place to go. You opened up your door and you made me a ballad on the floor.
When we started here almost 6 years ago, it was guesstimated that there were about 250 homeless folks on the streets. Well, today it's guesstimated that there are 800 to 1,000 homeless folks on the streets. And there are 3 times as many beds in the shelter system as there were. So there are actually a smaller percentage of homeless persons who are actually getting in any shelters. That's not progress. That's defeatism. Shelters have absolutely no impact on homelessness at all. There is no safety net. There's this enormous abyss of despair and poverty and chaos and abuse. They need accessible, affordable housing. If a person is spending more than 35% of their net income on housing, they are working their way into being poorer.
As in all major cities, Cleveland is confronted with the constant problem of too little decent, affordable housing and too many abandoned, deteriorating houses and buildings. 9 neighborhood organizations banded together to find ways to rehabilitate these properties rather than see them demolished. Through their efforts, about 120 low-cost housing units per year are returned to the market.
A lot of the families do a lot of the maintenance of the houses themselves, and it keeps the cost of the house lower. There's no down payment, so basically everything that they pay into the property goes towards the purchase of the house. After the 15-year period, then the house is, they have the option to purchase the property.
Programs like Choice in Youngstown, the Cleveland Housing Network, and the Committee United for Action in Cincinnati are some of the projects working to provide more low-income housing. The Committee United for Action is a unit of 40 low-income organizations whose purpose is to take a hands-on approach to decision-making, policy formation, and reinvestment in the community.
The reinvestment work in our community, in our city, I guess, it takes a cooperative effort between all parties concerned, which come from the grassroots people to the financial institute and to all interested people who has the same concerns to work together.
But demand for affordable housing continues to grow faster than building or renovation efforts can meet.
Are we solving the housing crisis of Cleveland? No. For those 120 families, yes, absolutely.
For many people in this state, adequate, decent housing is beyond the limits of their budgets. Similarly, health care has become a luxury few can afford. Medical insurance is a lot like the good health it protects. Those who have it often take it for granted. Those who have lost it realize how precious it is.
Poverty is recognizing that your children need medical attention, but you are so uninsured or underinsured that you have to watch them deteriorate in front of your eyes because you can't get them the attention they need.
Why we're the only country left in the world other than South Africa where health care remains a privilege rather than a right is anybody's guess, but it really is the reason that most of our people, anyway, are driven onto welfare.
The issues of poverty are an ill wind that blows around each of us. The winds of change could as easily blow into your fate as well as into that of the homeless person huddled on the street.
To stand idly by and merely whistle at the wind really contributes to the problem. But you can choose instead to make a significant impact. We must help our fellow citizens change their attitudes.
We can educate our young people to believe that poor people are bad, that they're lazy, that they're all on drugs, and if they really wanted to work, they could work. We can educate our kids to believe that. Or we can educate them to believe, as is the case, that people are poor, in most cases, because they don't have any choices.
Communicate with public officials, local, state, and national. Let them know of your concern and interest. Insist upon upgrades in jobs, education, housing, and health care now.
See, we tend to think you can't change the system. Well, as a matter of fact, you can change the system, because the system got to be the way it is because of a whole series of human decisions.
Volunteer in shelters, literacy centers.
We need to be with our people as they're struggling with these questions and these issues. We should not feel immune from the suffering that they are going through.
Participate in grassroots programs. These groups offer a hand up rather than a handout.
We have plenty of opportunities for people to get involved as volunteers, as contributors, as people that are doing everything from slapping a coat of paint on a house to stuffing envelopes to helping with their various and important professional skills.
Helping those in need by doing as much and whatever you can is part of the tradition that is America itself. Ask yourself, how can I help? Then follow through. It's hard to take that first step, but that step will go a long way to help people trying to break out of the patchwork of poverty.
You opened up your door and you laid me a pallet on the floor. Don't ever turn a stranger from your home. I won't. Don't you ever turn a stranger from your home. Don't turn a stranger from your home. The day may come when you'll be